screens here. So if you are on Zoom, you'll want to put the video full screen, and we'll go from here. All right, so pitch perfect. Pitch perfect, how to successfully pitch your idea, project, or startup. Like everything in life from my perspective is about our capacity to communicate and convey value, right? From when we were just this big, crying to get our attention of our mother, to when we were 18, probably begging for more time to get our act together, to when our first job came around or our first opportunity. Everything is about our capacity to communicate our value. And this is basically the idea of a pitch. Before I jump into it, I want to get a pulse of the audience. Why do you care at all about pitching? Why is that important to you? What are you working on? What are you working toward? And why do you believe that being better at being able to pitch will benefit you, your business, and your life? Engage the chat box. I want this to be an experience for you where you not only learn, but you do some things that can probably spark something within you that helps you not only learn how to pitch, but gives you the emotional juice to go out there and do it. Because it's one thing to learn, it's one thing to listen to me run my mouth, and it's altogether something different to go out there and execute. So let's engage. Why are you here? Why is pitching important to you? What is your why? Anybody? If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, chime in. On Zoom, why are you here? Why do you want to learn more about the art and science of being able to pitch? And while you're doing that, and we'll highlight some of the people out there who are chatting, I'll tell you why it's important to me. I grew up in Oakland, California, right? Poor urban area during the 80s, right? Height of the crack era. All the drugs, the violence, all of that stuff that went with it. And growing up having nothing and always having to fight for what I did get, I understood early the importance of being able to communicate, right? If I wasn't able to communicate, then that guy down the street, he was going to pound on me. If I wasn't able to communicate, I was going to not be able to eat. I had to be able to tell people, hey, this is what I can provide you. This is why it's important for you to align with me. This is why I need you to go along with what I'm presenting. I had to pitch at every corner. And God bless my dad. He abused me. He took me to Toastmasters meetings when I was like 11 years old and made me speak. Like 11. I thought it was child abuse, like cruel and unusual punishment, making me go to Toastmasters events. But again, in that arena, seeing firsthand and practicing, drilling and rehearsing, communicating, I learned again the power of being able to communicate. And for me, being able to pull myself up and to change the destiny of my family. I was able to go to college. I was able to start a business. I was able to go into corporate America and convince publicly traded companies, little old X, little old me, get a boy from Oakland, California, to give me $100,000 to help them train their leaders and their teams, or $60,000 to help them do this, that, and the other, right? I've been on the upside of $100 million in upside revenue through the businesses that I've helped over the years. And I can tell you the one skill that mattered most in all of it was the capacity to communicate. And that is the essence of what it means to pitch. So for me, it's deeply embedded into who I am, right? Because I know I have to be able to pitch my value. And for you, for anybody out there, what for you is of the utmost importance in terms of pitching? I'm gonna read a few comments. Danielle, I need to pitch the needs of my college to the politicians and civic leaders to pass policies, for sure. We elect our politicians, but if we still don't get out there and pitch and say, these are the things, the stances, the causes that matter, they'll fall on deaf ears. I'm doing a pitch project in my entrepreneur workshop. Cool. This is Judy. What's your, what are you making? What are you looking to pitch? Pitching presentation for Kathy, Brooke. I need to pitch my proposal to colleagues elected so they understand the value of what I do. Got it. Denise, I need to be able to share with my students the value of speaking up. which will build confidence. That's the interesting thing, Denise. The question that people often ask is, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it speaking up that builds confidence, or does confidence cause you to speak up? One of the things in working with speakers, like all across the country, like hundreds, and helping them to work on their public speaking, the one thing I recognize is the most important aspect of becoming confident in speaking is just like becoming confident in tying your shoelaces. It's doing it. It's doing it. Whether it's doing it at this level or this level, it is simply doing it. So kudos to you for that. Irene or Carrie, I'm here because I'm tired of not being seen by the world. Ooh, of not knowing what to do, what to say. Also being turned away from society because I'm stumbling on my words. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. When we go into this and learning how to pitch, one of the things that we're going to come up on is the idea of being able to not be polished. Being a polished communicator isn't really the target. It happens over time. The most important part of being a great communicator is being authentic, is being transparent, is knowing a few key things and then being stuck on them. I mean, quite literally stuck on them to where whether the words are falling out of your mouth eloquently or you are stumbling, the other side goes, I get it, I feel it, I want to support you. So thank you for sharing that. Thomas, pitch ideas to engage potential team members and collaborators. Got it. And Denise, I absolutely agree. All right. So we all have our reasons for wanting to pitch. And what we're going to go over today is stuff that I've learned over the last 20 years. Like I said, I'm working with small mom and pop businesses, startups, mid-sized, mid-tier businesses, publicly traded companies, helping people to get millions of dollars in funding, helping to bring ideas from their infancy to exit, the whole nine. I've been a part of all facets of that. And we're going to talk about some of the secrets or some of the things I've learned along the way to help you to be able to pitch your idea, your startup, or your project. And if you have any questions, definitely bang on that chat box and engage and comment, and we're going to rock and roll it. This is not me, a one-way talk. You know, we want to engage, we want to ask questions, get something out of today, and make sure we move it forward. So, pitch perfect. Let's talk about it. Whenever I'm talking about pitching or communicating, I always come back to this triangle. If you're taking notes, write a triangle on your piece of paper, right? It's going to come down to these three things. 1, 2, and 3, a triangle. These three things, but I'm not going to cover them yet because this is basically what you need to communicate. But before we get to what, we need to understand something first, because this is a stumbling block I think a lot of young entrepreneurs make, and we have a lot of students on today's training. And especially those who are super gung-ho about their ideas and what they do, they forget something that comes before what to communicate. And what we're talking about here is this. Now, let's say we have some enterprising young women on today's training call, right? And inevitably, you're here thinking about your idea, and you're like, you know what? I want to pitch it and take it to the finish line. I want to win. I want to make it work. How many of you are like that, right? Young men, young women, or us older ones who are like, look, I still got some juice in my tank. I want to make it work. I want to pull it to the finish line. It's me. This is what I'm thinking about. I want to pitch. I want to get it to the finish line. I have a great idea. I have value. I want to be heard. Who said that? I want to be heard. I want to be seen. Yeah, Heather says, me, laugh aloud. Yeah, of course we do. This is us. And we're visualizing, thinking about what we're going to say, how we're going to say it, right? How we're going to pitch and win, how we're going to take it to the finish line, our finish line. How many of you have a finish line in your head right now? How many of you? Right? Bang that chat box and say, yes, I have a finish line. I have something that I'm trying to do, something I want to accomplish, a goal I'm trying to work toward. I can see it. I can feel it. Yes, Kathy says, yes, with exclamation point. Yes, how many of you? I have something. Denise, definitely. We all have something. And that is what we're here. We're saying, I want to learn how to get my something. I want to finish. I want to pitch and win. That's the goal. That's the obsession. And there's nothing wrong with it. But here's the thing I want you to consider. It's almost backwards. It's almost backwards. Hey, Jacqueline. Jacqueline says, hey, out here from LinkedIn. So we got LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. Jacqueline, thank you for chiming in. So everybody wants to finish, and that's what we obsess on, our finish line, what we want. And we feel it. It's a vision. And hopefully as an entrepreneur or someone who wants to make change in the world, you have that deeply like in your gut, in your soul. Even for your project, as a kid and entrepreneur trying to pitch your project, you want to win. You want to get an A. You want what you want. We all want that. Alfredo, I can see the finish line, but I'm trying to find the road. All right, Alfredo, we're about to get you to the road because this is the road. But here's the thing about your finish line. It comes after, way after considering something else. It isn't about your finish line, especially as it relates to pitching someone or communicating with some. You know whose finish line it's about? Before I give an answer in the chat box, whose finish line is it really about? Who has an answer there? Who's going to be an A student? Who wants to get that A? The goal? Not quite, Kathy. Not quite. Whose finish line is it really about? The customer. Juan, yes. The customer, that's whose finish line it's about. Not yours. It's about the customer's finish line. The audience. Your audience's finish line is the thing that you need to obsess with, because if you can help them to get across their finish line, what are they going to do for you? Yeah, Alfredo, solving their problems. Yeah. That's the obsession. That's the shift. That's what will turn you into a great communicator. That is what's going to help you to move things forward. If you stay obsessed with your own finish line and what you want and how you want it, it's great to have that burning fire. But the best communicators, and I've seen it from the top to the bottom, are those who obsess on their customer. That's whose finish line you need to figure out and obsess over. Because if you can help them to get across their finish line, they'll help you to move your ball forward, especially when it comes to pitching someone. Whether we're trying to get funding, we're trying to get someone on our team, we're trying to change public policy, we need to understand what our audience is after, what turns them on. And there are two key things I want you to consider as it relates to your audience. You need to know what makes them happy, their pleasure, their paradise. And you need to know what makes them sad, their fears, the things that they worry about, their anxiety. How many of us, when we think about pitching our products, our service, our idea to, say, an investor, and we're looking at that investor and we're like, oh my God, we're so nervous. This person is worth $100 million and we're in this room and we feel this anxiety and these people we look up to and we're like, oh my God, like I can't believe I'm here. And that's our audience. That's our audience. We lost all sight of the fact that they are regular, everyday people who have things that they want and things that they fear, things that they run away from, things that they want to go away. Everyone has that. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much experience and success you have, everybody who is still breathing and is in our world trying to do something is going to want to pursue happiness and pleasure. And they're going to have, this is pleasure, and they're going to want to run away from pain. Everyone. So there are a couple of questions I want you to focus on before you get into the act of what you say when you're pitching. You need to understand your audience. Your audience comes first. So here are a host of questions I want you to ask yourself in getting to know your audience. This is a very simple through line. Someone said, I need to find the road. Well, here's your road. If you don't know your audience, you'll never be able to win them over. You'll never be able to align what they value with what you value. So you got to obsess with your audience. You got to know who your audience is. How many of you know who your audience is? When you really think about who you're trying to pitch or communicate with, who is your audience? Who are they? If you're taking notes or bang the chat box, who is your audience? Who wants to give me an example of who your audience is right now that you're trying to learn how to better pitch and communicate with? Who is your audience? My social media. Thank you, Irene or Carrie. I don't know what you go by. Children, spouse. Of all three of those, I got three examples. Irene said social media. Estella Jones said children. Alfredo said spouse. Who is ESP? Exact, specific, and precise. Between those three, who would you say was the most exact, specific, and precise as it relates to their who? Would it be social media, children, or spouse? The people that are, Lanita said the people are going about spouse. Yeah. Let me put this chat up there. Alexander said people who are going to buy. And then Lanita says spouse. Yes, spouse is most important because we know who that is. It's one person. You can't get more specific than that. So one of the things I want you to fight for in trying to wrestle with the idea of knowing your audience is to get as exact, specific, and precise as you can. Who said social media? Who on social media? Is it women? Is it men? Is it presidents of corporations? Is it housewives or house husbands? Is it people who are 21 to 25? Is it a 55 to 54-year-old middle manager in Idaho? You see what I'm saying? The more exact and specific and precise you are with who you're targeting, the better you are going to be able to what? Who wants to take a stab at that? If the better you know who you're targeting, what will you be able to do as it relates to what we're talking about here? It depends on the product. Okay. Help. Estella says help. Ari says pitch. Yeah. But I want you to go a little bit deeper. You'll be able to pitch and help better. Why? You can better convince them. I want you to understand something. Story and communicating and pitching isn't about convincing anybody of anything. The more you have to convince and sell and prod and poke and push, the more disconnected you are from really aligning with someone's value. Think about it. When someone has something that you actually wanted, let's say you walk into McDonald's. How many of you have been to McDonald's? I'm just going to pretend I'm in some foreign place. How many have been to McDonald's? Like everybody raise their hand. How many times have you walked into a McDonald's or seen somebody walk into a McDonald's? They walk in and they go, and then the cashier says, okay, you want a burger or fries? And the person's like, no, I don't know. Hey, you want to get that burger? That burger got lettuce. I ain't been to McDonald's in a while. What's the Big Mac? 2 all beef patties, that nasty ass sauce. all of that stuff. How many times has a cash register or cashier had to convince, sell, or push somebody to buy? You've never seen it. You've never seen it. Because McDonald's has a menu, has an offer, and you know exactly what it is. And when you go in, you know you want it. You're already ready to buy. They've done a good job of understanding what makes you happy and what makes you sad. You're hungry, and McDonald's is good enough for you to eat. So when you know who you're dealing with, you understand the pleasure that drives people. You understand this key thing. You understand what they're after. So you can relate better. You understand what they're running from, what their fear and their pain is. You understand it now. The more specific you are around your who. All right. So the next one is what? What does your audience want? Right? What are they looking for? What causes them happiness? What causes them pain and fear? Why? Why are they looking for that? Why does this thing cause them pain, fear, anxiety, stress, and worry? It sounds like, I I don't want to go through all of that. But I promise you, 9 times out of 10, when I'm working with someone who has a communication issue, they don't know their audience. They don't understand the world that they're trying to enter because they've been focused on what? Their own finish line. That's the disconnect. Before I can show you what to say and how to say it, you got to know. You got to know who you're saying it to. How? Right? How can you help them with their pleasure and their pain? Here's a big one. Where? Where are they? When I'm working with entrepreneurs on their story and their marketing, and I ask them, well, where are your people? And somebody give me an answer. What do people usually say when I say, where is your customer? What do they say? Anybody want to hazard to guess? What's the first place to come online? Arnie says, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of us say, I don't know where my customer is. But if you don't know where your customer is, what is that really, really telling you? You don't know as much as you need to know about your audience, right? But most people say, who are in business, they say social media. They are online. Yeah, everybody's online, but where? LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, right? Pinterest, where are they? Oh, and if they're on Facebook, what groups are they in? What magazines do they read? Where do they go for vacation? The more you understand about where your target market is, when you figure out what to say, you'll be able to what? Go to where they are and say it. I know it sounds like ridiculously simple, but oftentimes the simplest thing to do is the most prudent and effective thing to do. Do you know where your target market is? All right. And last but not least is this when. When can you connect with them? When can you find a way to best solve their problems? For example, I started going back live and doing live trainings and things of that nature. I'm trying to figure out when I should do my live trainings. And I'm looking at the data. You know, I just moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. 80% of the people that I'm connected with, because I've been on the East Coast for the last few years, 80% of my market is 3 hours ahead. So it's like 9:30 right now. They're going to miss this. But I know my audience, the people who I can have reach with, I got to go a little bit earlier. All right, so now that we've covered this idea of really understanding that it's not about your finish line, it's their finish line. One of the things I want to encourage you to not do is to skip over this and say, hey, okay, get to the story stuff. Get to what I say. Get to that part. Get to the part where you tell me what to say and how to pitch. I promise you that this exercise will take you halfway down the road, if not further. When you understand somebody and what drives them, pleasure and pain and fear, you can better communicate. You don't have to convince. You don't have to persuade. You don't have to be slick. You understand. This is what they really want. This is what they really want. So, since we're talking about pitching, what is it that the investor, most of us are looking, when we say pitch, we're looking for investment. What is it that the investor wants? Anybody? We want somebody to join us to fund our project. What do they want? What does their finish line look like? They want profit. There you go. They want profit. They want profit. What else? Thank you, Heather, for that. What else do they want? What does the investor want when we're trying to pitch? They want profit. They want return on investment. They want ROI. What else do they want? They want to be secure. Good one. They want to be secure. Thank you. Brooke, they want engagement. Brooke, elaborate on that. What do you mean by engagement? What do you mean by engagement? Something they can use. Yep. Ari. They want to make a profit. Yep. Lanita. They want people to buy to what you're doing, spending money on us. They want people to buy. Right. Now let's push pause on this idea of what the investor wants. Some of you said you have an entrepreneur project where you're pitching an idea. Think about it. How much time have you really spent on whether or not you're telling a story of how profitable your idea is? How much return on investment it brings? How secure it is? When I look at the deck for a lot of young entrepreneurs, they're focusing on their widget, how special it is. But nobody up here said anything about how good the product is or how novel the idea is. You said things like profit, ROI, and secure. You understand? You start to see the connection here when you stop and pause and you ask the question, what is it that my audience wants? We can solve this riddle of communicating. My daughter is 9. She just turned 9 on Valentine's Day just passed. And before she asks me for anything, and I've trained her, and now I can't even say no to her. She's learned all the secret sauce. She always asks, okay, what does daddy want? Right? Children know this intuitively, but she's taking it to a whole new level. She's like, what does daddy want? All right, okay. Daddy, can I stay up and watch this? Because look, it has some educational components in it. You want me to grow up to be smart, right? Yeah, I do. And this has a show that's going to show me all these things where I'm going to actually do these riddles. She went through this whole 10-minute speech about all the things that daddy wanted and that I should let her do that. And of course, she was able to stay up and get across her finish line because she helped me to get across mine as a parent. This is the only riddle for you to figure out. Know your audience. What Anita says, I know people when business is good, they like to brag. They're friends that they own a business. Okay, yeah, all right. Definitely, bragging, we all like to brag. But we won't be able to brag if we don't help somebody else finish the finish line. Now, this is key and this is important because there's a trick question coming up, so let's jump into it. When you're pitching, especially when it comes to investing, the key thing is transferring certainty. When you know someone's world, all you're trying to do is transfer certainty that you can take away their pain, fear, anxieties, or help them with them and help them to be more happy, connected, free, and experience pleasure in paradise. You're transferring certainty. Your certainty around your idea and helping them to become more certain of it. That's the only goal, transferring certainty. Or one more thing, let me go back one more. Let me clear this up. One more thing I want young ones to know. You're often focused on the finish line of getting investment, right? I need $1 million for my idea. But there are so many steps in between. When you ask what or how do I get there, or how do they help me get across the finish line, there are a bunch of steps in between. And if you don't win this step, you'll never get to this step. And if you don't win this step, you'll never get to this step. And often the step before you even talk about money, which is light years away, is getting a meeting. Getting a meeting where you get 30 seconds. Then you have to be able to pitch in 30 seconds. You have to win that. Then you have to be able to come back and pitch for maybe 3 minutes. There's a progression to it. And when we know our audience and how they work, we can prepare for where we are. So many of us, we waste time trying to prepare for a place that we are nowhere near. We're nowhere near. We're nowhere near the money. We need to first get a meeting. We need to first send an email. We need to first reach out on social media to make a connection. We need to win this first. And this is, again, why it's so important to go through this process of asking the questions that will help you to understand where you are in that process. Any questions on this before I move on? Any questions before we move on? Because this is one of the ones that when I'm working with a very exuberant young entrepreneur, it's like, wait a minute, we are 20 steps before funding. The last company, artificial intelligence company out of Colombia that was able to raise $1 million plus and get funded, you had to go through this process. What comes first, right? If you know it, you're more likely to succeed at each step of the way. All right? All right. So transferring certainty. You got to be able to transfer certainty. So Alfred says, so a pitch is equivalent of a resume, so to say. In essence, the resume, if you're trying to get a job, Alfred, you're trying to get a job, you don't go from apply to hire. There's steps. You got to submit a resume. There's step one. Then you got to get that resume. You got to go talk to the recruiter and get I don't know. I've never had a job, so I'm talking out, but I would assume you got to talk to the recruiter, whoever said that. Then third, you got to go do one interview. Then fourth, you got to do another interview before you're actually hired. Most of us, we don't consider all of these steps. So we're communicating as if we are here just before getting hired. Well, you got to win this step first, then this step, then this step. That makes sense? All right. All right, so remember I showed you this triangle? Well, here it is. There are 3 stories that, regardless of what you're trying to pitch or communicate, branding, marketing, sales, there are 3 stories that everyone should have in their back pocket and be able to communicate. The first is your founder's story, as in you. Why are you in this? Why are you doing this? Why are you worthy of someone investing in, believing in, engaging with? What's your credential? What's your story? Then we have the customer story. How do you change or impact their lives? How do you add pleasure, as we talked about, and reduce pain? That's the second story. And the third story is your mission story. It's the future. It's what you stand for. It's how life will be better because you exist. We're going to dive into each of these stories specifically, but if we just look at these for just a second, this is your past, this is the present, and this is the future. You need to be able to speak to all 3 of those timelines with stories: past, present, and future. Right? Founder story, you. Customer story, right now, what you're doing for customers. And then the future, how you exist. And we're going to break this down in a second. But first, before the most important story we talked about was this customer-driven story. Now, for you who are pitching products and services and you're trying to get funded, et cetera, who's the customer? I'm asking, like someone, who's the customer? If we go to this first story, who's the customer when we're pitching? Who's the customer? You sell, who has a product idea? Anybody have a product or service idea they're working on and want to pitch and get funded? What's the name of that product or service? And who's the customer when you're pitching? We have any takers with that? Going once, going twice. All right, Majid. Majid says classic car shop. Carrie says trucking. Brooke says, I'm trying to pitch a marketing plan. Okay. Well, we're pitching, who's the customer? No one has given me a who, an exact, specific, and precise person. Who's the customer? Everyone is a customer. No, Alfredo. No, don't say that. No, everyone is a customer, not a customer. Residents of Indio, Brooke says, weed delivery services. Heather, so are you going to start a dispensary? Okay. Alfreda says, on their knees. Irene Carrie says, investors. Yes, this is a trick question. I sit down with entrepreneurs and we're going through their customer story for pitching, and I say, who is the customer? And they immediately go to the people who are buying their services. But remember what I said, when you sit down to communicate, you have to say, who am I communicating with? And if you're pitching, who are you communicating with? The investor. The investor is the customer, not your customers for your service. The investors, that's your audience. And this should change how you think about what you're actually communicating, right? So there are 3 stories that I want you to focus on when you think about pitching to your investor to help them to understand your customer journey, how you can impact them as customers. Because remember what we said, what does an investor want? They want security, they want ROI, they want profit, they want to know that they're backing a good, right? They want all these things. So there are 3 stories that are all within this customer story that I want you to focus on. The first one is the concept story. Concept story. Can you take someone from not knowing to getting it in 60 seconds? They absolutely get it. They're getting it like boom. As soon as you say it, oh, I got it. I understand it in 60 seconds or less. Right? Kevin O'Leary says 90 seconds or less, but I watched Shark Tank plenty of times. It's 60 seconds or less. Can you help someone go from not knowing anything about you to going, ooh, I get it in under a minute? Can you do that with your project? For your project in Entrepreneur 3 class, the customers are the judges. Yes, Denise said it. The customers are the judges. And one of the first things they're going to judge you on is, can you help them to understand your concept? Just like that. How many of you have a concept story where within 60 seconds, you can help someone truly understand your concept or idea? Like bop, 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 boom, 1, 2, 3, knock them out with a concept story. Not rambling for 10 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 60 seconds. Attention, we say pay attention. Well, the payment is high. So we got to come with it. And we only have 60 seconds. So if you're sitting down and taking notes, ask yourself, how can I create a concept story where within 60 seconds, I can explain my idea? For everybody online right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you are nowhere near 60 seconds, it takes you a half an hour to explain what you do, and I've been there, to a 10, I got it down to 60, 30 seconds. Where are you in that range of 1 to 10 as it relates to your pitch for your concept story? Everybody give a number. Where are you? We got a 1, a 4. Oh, you a 1? No, come on. Alfredo 4, Catherine an 8, Estella 8, Dan Walden. Okay, all right. Listen, here's what I'm gonna do. Can we give which one of you 8s want to come on and tell your story within 60 seconds and go and get some feedback? Who's that brave soul? Raise your hand. Say me or yes or something in the chat box. I'm sorry for all you all not on Zoom, but everybody on Facebook, you won't be able to do this, but it should be interesting. All right, everybody was confident with those 8s, and now I don't have any takers. It says my audio isn't working. All right. Your audio isn't working. Somebody said LOL. All right, I'll give you a pass. But you got to be ready to just be able to, boom, 60 seconds. Can you do that? Work on that story. If you work on it, you'll be able to do it. A lot of you are thinking like, I'm a 1 and I'm nowhere near. And the truth is, the only reason you're not near it is because you haven't made it a target. You haven't made it a target. Set a timer for 1 minute. Here's what we do. Set a timer for 1 minute, go. And the first time, you're not going to come close. Then do it again. Then do it again. And do it again. Record yourself, because what you're going to say is something that you're not going to remember what you said, but it's going to be nice. I've forgotten better stuff than I remembered thousands of times. And when I'm with clients and I'm working on it, the running rule is it's on you to record what I say, because I'm not going to remember it. And the same thing for you. Set a stopwatch, take 10 to 15 minutes max, and for 1 minute at a time, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. By the time you get to the 15th minute, you will have shaved a lot of the junk and garbage off of your 1 minute story, and eventually you will get there. But the only reason you're not there is because you haven't made it the target yet. April said a 1, Lita said an 8, Nicole said a 3. All right, got you. All right, here's the second customer story. By the way, why is the concept story an important story for the investor? Because remember, they're the customer. Why is that an important story for the investor? Anybody? Well, it's an important story for the investor because what do they want? They're probably listening to thousands of ideas and people rambling on and on and on and on. They want someone who is able to get to it and show them that they understand their value proposition just like that. Because if they don't, their fear is they'll be investing with someone who doesn't really understand what they're doing or how they're doing it, right? So that's why that's an important story. Here's a second customer story I want you to work on. The avatar story. The avatar story is a lot easier to create and work with, but all you're trying to do is take someone from a user problem to a user solution. Your avatar name is Kate. Kate is a 35-year-old woman who lives in Idaho. She has this issue with her kids and homework. Well, we've developed a virtual tutorial, a virtual training, whatever school, to bring her kids and other kids in and around the area, right? And we bring them together, they play, and da-da-da. You tell a story of your perfect avatar and how you solve their problem with your solution. But you tell it as a story, right? Through the lens of that avatar, not describing the facts, the features, and the functions of your service. Tell a story. You have a longer runway with this than the 60 seconds. But here's why I put this one first. If you don't tell that story, you won't get the time to tell the second story. You won't get the opportunity. Remember what I said? You have to win this battle first before you get to this one? Well, that 60-second story is the one that opens the door to buy you more time to be able to pitch your service and your product. All right? So your avatar story, be able to tell that story of your perfect customer with the problem that they have and how you solve it and they go through it. How long should that avatar story last? You want it to be succinct. Good question, Catherine. You want it to be succinct. You don't want it to be long. Everything is about potency, right? You want it to be as long as it needs to be, but not a second longer. And by the way, that sounds like a lot of pressure. But here's the thing that solves this pressure dilemma. Here's the thing that solves that pressure dilemma. It's called reps. Everyone wants to get down to the best and highest and most powerful story imaginable. There is no most powerful story imaginable. Which each and every rep that you take, it gets better. It gets better. It gets better. But the thing that stops you is you're thinking about this rep right here. That's the thing that stops you. Each time you say it, you'll get better. Each time you practice, drill, rehearse it, you'll get better. You'll shave some time off. Okay? All right, the third one. All right, the number story. This is an important one, and a lot of entrepreneurs drop the ball on this one. Kevin O'Leary, if you're looking for someone you want to get some advice on pitching, Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, look him up. He has some brutal YouTube videos on how to pitch and how to go through it. But his whole thing, and he said it 100 times, you deserve a place in hell if you don't know your numbers. That's what he says. If you can tell me your concept and your avatar story, and then I give you the time because I'm excited, and then I ask you about your numbers and you are oblivious, he was like, there's a special place in hell for you and I will take you there. Because you're right there. You're right there. Right there being able to clutch opportunity, and you fumble the ball on the 1 yard line because you don't know your numbers. The numbers are what take this investor customer from fuzzy dream to real possibility. So what am I talking about in terms of numbers? What's your customer acquisition cost? What's your margins? What's your beachhead market? Who are your competitors? Right? Where do you see yourself 5, 10, 15 years from now? Right? What is your turnover rate? Right? What is your production? How much does it cost you to produce? Right? Where are you leveraged? Like, you need to know these numbers. I don't have them all off the top of my head, but there are numbers that you just got to know. And there's nothing like hearing someone say, here's my concept, boom. Oh, by the way, here's our avatar story, boom. And then when someone asks a business-related question, you go, here it is. Not, yeah, I never thought of that. That makes this investor what? Feel what? Fear, anxiety. I'm not giving you my money. I'm not giving you my money. No, you don't know the numbers. Because remember we talked about on another slide when we go back. Let me see if I can go back. We said, what did the investor want? Everybody said it. Oh, I deleted it. But they said they wanted security, profit, ROI. This is business. So if you don't know your business numbers, you put yourself in a bad position. So while you may know these stories, the concept and the avatar, you want to work hard to understand your numbers or to bring someone on your team who can help you with those numbers, right? And if you're young and you're like, I don't have any of those things, be truthful and transparent. We'll get to that in a second and say, I don't know my numbers. Can you help me to get them? Right? So any questions on this? By the way, this is an acronym, CAN, CAN, Connect, Avatar, and Numbers, CAN, for your customer story when it relates to investors. All right? All right. Let's go to the founder story. Why is a founder story important for an investor? Your founder story. Anybody. Why would it be important for an investor to know your story, the founder's story? Who has something for me here? If someone walked up to you on the street, Ari says, I don't know my numbers. Can you help me, X? Sure. Text me. 800-425-2095. 800-425-2095. Connection to feel connected. Yeah, to feel connection. Yes, that's important. Juan said, are you the right person for the job? Yes. Pamela says, how to get started may impress them. How you got started. Relate and common ground. These are all important factors, right? It is about connection. It is about showcasing, who you are and where you've been. But as important, it's really about dispelling the idea that you're going to fail. Remember what we said, it's about transferring certainty. So as an investor, I want to know if I'm giving you my money, that you're going to be responsible with it, that you have what it takes to take it down the field and score. So I got to know a little bit about you. No matter how good the product, the service, the idea is, if I don't trust you as an individual, then we can't pass go. We don't pass go, collect $200, none of that. It's a dead deal. So we have to understand how to communicate our story. So let's start it like this. Here's a story I want you to focus on. Your story. A story that tells them about you and how you go from stranger to a trusted partner. This is what I've done. This is where I've been, right? This is what makes me a good steward of your money with this idea. Do you have that story sewn up? Right? Now, for many of you, you instantly go to what question in your head? What's the first thing that has to pop up when you think about this? Anybody? Just being truthful and honest, totally 100% transparent. What comes up when I say you need to tell your story about how you are qualified to make this happen? What fears, pains, objections comes up in your head? Heather said it, insecurity. Another one, but even beyond insecurity, what else might you be feeling? Anybody here? Yeah, you're going to get rejected. But why do most people not feel comfortable sharing their story, especially when it comes to asking somebody else for support or money? They feel inadequate. Exactly, Heather. They feel inadequate. I've never done this before. I don't have experience. Right? Like, I've never built a business. I've never had someone give me $1 million. I've never done this before. I am totally inexperienced. I don't know. Well, the great thing is that over half of investors, companies who get investment, the founders have never done it. So it's not about whether or not you've done it before. You still need to fight to find a story that conveys the intangible. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was younger and I was fighting to get my first big deal with the company, I went in, I pitched, I talked about my facts, my functions, my features of my service. I got to the end. the president of the company. This was a doctor's office, a multi-million-dollar doctor's office. The contract was for $60,000. We got to the end and she was like, I don't know. And I told her everything about the product, the pitch, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to help her. But what she was saying is, I don't know if you can do all the stuff you talked about. And I had never done it. I'd never done it. But guess what story I told her? I told her about how I lost my brother. If any of you look up my story, how I lost my brother, and it caused me to question who I was as a man, as a leader, and how I had to face my own fears because I didn't want to lead. I let him just flounder. And how I became a professional mixed martial artist. And I jumped into a cage, right? It didn't matter about my Ivy League degree or my business. I jumped into a cage, became a professional fighter. And in that cage, I told her the story of going back and forth and on my back and, you know, the lights and the crowd and the fear and how I recognized in my darkest hour, being more tired than I ever wanted to be, wanting to give up, I recognized and realized what I was fighting for. And I came out of that fight victorious. And I said, you know what? I know what I'm fighting for. Do you? She went from this cold, stone-hearted, like, I don't trust you, to crying and signing the damn contract. So it wasn't necessarily about a story about why I'm qualified. It was about getting her to believe. Remember what I said? It's transferring certainty. So don't play yourself short. Half of you grew up in San Bernardino County. We were at, where were we at, Thomas? We were at Garner Hope Productions. San Bernardino County, or San Bernardino, has the label of being the world's most dangerous city quite a few years. It's not a walk in the park. You have a story to share, and if you share it, you will get more people having certainty in you and your character and who you are and what you have to bring to the table. It isn't always about X's and O's experience. It's about character, grit, dependability, right? All right? Here's a second story to get the people, investors, excited about you. It's our story, right? You go from your team, as in our story, you go from a group of random people to the perfect complements, right? Perfect complements. And what do I mean by that? If you're trying to pitch and you're trying to raise money, you definitely want to build a team, right? We don't know everything. We aren't good at every aspect of it, of a business, of product development. We need somebody with marketing, operations, sales, vision, missioning, leadership, HR. We need people with a variety of skills, and we as founders, as special as we are, we don't have it all. And that's why we want to surround ourselves with people who are the perfect complements. Perfect complements. And this is something that Kevin O'Leary talks about. When he looks at a founder and the founder pretends to be all things, he knows that that company isn't going to succeed. He wants to see complementary pieces. I'm good at this, and I have someone else who is good at this. And when they come together, ooh, that's special. That's special. Right? All right? All right, so that story. What's the last one in this? The understand story. And what I mean by understand is that you have a self-awareness where you can talk about your strength and be transparent about where you're weak. This is a very powerful story to tell. We have this piece, this piece, this piece. We're really good, but tell you the truth, we do have some blind spots over here. And we know it. And that makes an investor go, ooh, okay. Confident enough to tell us what they're good at, transparent enough with us to tell us what they lack and are blind, and you can ask a follow-up question. We're hoping that you can help us with your resources to shore up that blind spot, right? One of the other fears that investors have is not only you losing their money, but what fear they have is that they won't be able to help because the investor is too pig-headed or doesn't want to comply or doesn't want to receive help. When you tell this story, you are saying, I not only want to take the money you have to offer, but I really want your advice, your support. And I'm self-aware enough to know I don't know it all. So you want to have these 3 stories. Why you're worthy, why your team is great, and also why you also have some blind spots and some issues you need to fix. All right? Anybody have any questions on this in terms of the 3 founder stories? All right, so this is an acronym, YOU, can you, right? Now let's get to the last set of stories, your mission story. The mission is about the future, right? It's about where you're going. And from a founder's perspective or an investor's perspective, they are concerned about where you're going from a very specific lens. So that first story I want you to work on is your growth story, right? How would you go from money today? Because one of the things that investors want to see is a path of profitability early, but as important to more money tomorrow. Here's our beachhead market, and beachhead means the first group of targeted people you're going after. How are you going to be profitable with them quickly? And then how are you going to grow into this larger, bigger thing, right? The growth curve. Can you talk or tell a story about that, your growth? All right. The second one in this is the ready for exit story. One of the things that investors want is they don't want to be in this thing forever. You may love your idea, but in talking to investors and working with them, they're looking for an exit. They want their money to be in, and eventually they want their money to be out. Have you considered how you are going to help them to exit? So how are you going to make sure you're ready for exit? Tell them the story that you have where you're going from work to do into mission accomplished. That's a great story. Mission accomplished is when we do this. When we've acquired this, we've gotten this, and this is where we exit. And your money, safe, secure, into next. Do you have that story? And the last one in this, and by the way, these stories, the customer story and the founder story, are probably the 2 most important. The mission story, sometimes you have time to work on. But the third one in this group is the world impact story, right? You go from making a buck to making change, to making a difference in the world. A lot of investors, though they are business minded, most are, and they will tell you without any hesitancy, it's about the dollars. But I always see a small bend when there's also some social good connected to it. Now, here's a key thing. Your business model shouldn't be connected to social good. Your business model should be so profitable that it allows you to be of social good and impact. There's a distinct difference between the 2. And a lot of investors, it depends on where you are, but a lot of investors will prefer profit that then gives you the capacity to be of social good versus social good as your business model. I think that's changing. I think the trend there is starting to shift a little bit where social impact is a viable business model. And you're getting more investors who want to do that. But the irony about that, even that is what? The only people who can invest in social impact are those who are profitable, right? So profit never leaves the equation as it relates to all of this coming together. All right, so we've covered a lot. And by the way, this is GRW. So we have an acronym, Can You Grow, in terms of those stories that fit within each of these groupings. All right? So now, all right, so that's a lot. That's a lot we've covered. But if I was to summarize it for you and say, where should I focus and what are some very tangible things for me to work on and do? And by the way, any questions before I jump into the summary of it all? Any questions out there? All right. So when it comes to your audience, I think first and foremost is doing a study, right? The who, what, and all of that. Know your audience. That's the first thing. Know your audience. The second thing is to work on your, we'll go customer story first. Know your customer story. If I was to spend most of my time, I would focus in this area with that C-A-N, right? C-A-N. If we go back, let's give you one more time to do a screenshot of this perhaps. No, go back. All right. Your concept story, your avatar story, and your number story. Those are the first three I would just work on, right, from the jump, because the reason they're so important is because these are stories that get you your next meeting or open doors, right, and keep people wanting to talk to you about your idea and concept. All right, so you want to do that. Let's change colors here. And any questions while I'm mapping out the summary? Let's see the chat box. So you want to work on your customer story, your audience and your customer story, and then you want to work on your founder story or stories, right? Your story, our team, and the understanding story of where your weaknesses are. And if you have the bandwidth and time, jump into these last bit, your mission story, right? And this is the GRW, your growth story, your ready for exit story, and your, what was the W again? I lost it. Who knows the W? Extra credit. World impact. There you go. World impact. All right. I ran my mouth. So Q&A. Let's do some Q&A real quick, if there are any. Any questions out there? Right. Pitching your story, transferring certainty. I think my sound then died. I think you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear us now?
All right, there I go. I can hear you. All right. So any questions, or any of those 8s want to get up here and tell their 1-minute story? Huh? Any of those 8s out there? All right, so if there's no questions, then I'm assuming you got some homework assignments. What are you going to do as it relates to what you've learned here today?
Irene has a question. When you started, were you nervous?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if everybody, what the question was, when you started, are you nervous? Guess what, Irene? I'm still nervous. It don't go away. Nervousness doesn't go away. All that happens is you become more accustomed to it. But the moment you start losing all sense of nervousness, you know you've plateaued and you need to go to another level. But that rarely happens. There's always nervousness. I grew up watching Mike Tyson fight, right? The baddest man on the planet, the most feared man on the planet. And you wouldn't have known it back then. But when he did his interviews, kind of the new Mike Tyson that everybody loves now, he says, every single fight he was scared to death. Every single time he thought that guy was going to get into the ring and rip his head off. Every single fight he thought that he was less than adequate and that he couldn't win. Every single fight when he entered the ring, his heart was pounding through his chest and he didn't know how to stop it or to calm it down. It isn't the nervousness that we need to be eliminating or concerning ourselves with. The only thing we need to concern ourselves with is just accepting that it's there and going forward anyway. Going forward anyway. And no matter how good or great we are, we all feel it. We all feel it. So whatever you're feeling, take the step anyway. Share your story, pitch your product, your service, your idea. The world needs you, point blank. Alfredo, were banks the main source of capital for investors? Rarely, if ever, no. Banks are in the business of loaning to hedged assets. There's a house or a home or a piece of real estate with a certain amount of value. Let's say the value of that real estate is $1 million. I want to go to the bank and I want them to loan me money. Well, they're only going to loan me, say, 70% loan to value. So I can only borrow $700,000 on that piece of property. It's hedged. It's leveraged. It's if I lose, they get the property. Hence, they don't lose money. Banks are in the business of losing money or risking it. Being an entrepreneur is a risky business. There is risk involved. There is loss involved. There is pain, struggle, heartache, and it's like chewing glass, as Elon Musk says. So banks are not in the business of giving money to entrepreneurs. They're like, wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. The people who give money to entrepreneurs are other entrepreneurs who are willing to deal with the risk. And because they're dealing with risk, the risk equals higher rewards, potential rewards. So if I invest in your company, Alfredo, and you're an unknown commodity, you're risky, I'm going to ask for a big percentage of your business because you're perceived as risky. And most entrepreneurs who get investment are okay with that. Why? Why are they okay with giving up a huge percentage of their business? Because without the capital, they can't go forward. Right? Any other question as it relates to pitching your products and your services? Right? I love questions, but I really love the idea of what are you going to do differently now? How are you apply this? How are you going to the world and make a difference? Right? I think we are many times so inundated with the idea of consuming that we don't make the shift to creating. And in the world of entrepreneurs or those who are successful, there's a consumption to creation ratio. In my life, if I read a book, I won't read a book or consume information unless I make myself accountable to applying it. Right? How will you apply this? Denise says, what do you think about pitching as it relates to crowdfunding? Crowdfunding is, a lot of people think crowdfunding is new, but it's not. It's been around forever. What's different now is digital crowdfunding, but I think the market now for crowdfunding, and I'm not an expert in this by any means, is mature. You have a great idea, you're able to convey it on some of the crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe or something of that nature. You can tell your story. And if the market appreciates it, think it's of value, you can get a good sum of money to get your business off the ground. If I was looking for money to start my business or to take it to the next level, all options will be on the table. From angel investors to friends and family to crowdfunding to SBC loans to the whole nine. Everything will be on the table for me. Thomas, practice. Yeah, it comes down, for me, I always tell people this thing is what separates people who succeed from those who don't. It's called PDR. PDR. Practice, drill, rehearse. You practice, drill, and rehearse in private, right? So you can profit in public. Practice, drill, rehearse in private so you can profit in public. Especially as it relates to pitching, especially as it relates to communicating. One of the things that and my wife would tell you, she always walks into a room and says, "Who are you talking to?" And after 20 years, she's like, "It's you. You talk to yourself." I talk to myself all the time. But you know what I'm doing? I'm practice, drilling, and rehearsing. Right? I've went over ideas thousands of times in my own head. Then I communicate them out loud to my best friend in the world. This is my best friend in the world. Not because I'm on social media. I think social media is a devil. I'm being hyperbolic here, but I try to limit that. But voice recordings, Evernote. My newest favorite app is Noted, where you can take notes and record at the same time, or Notability. I have thousands of hours of voice recordings, of sharing my thoughts, engaging with them, asking myself questions. Why is that important? Where did you get that? How was that connected? Who was this for? Who would love this? Who does this help? I am engaging, I'm practice, drilling, and rehearsing over and over and over in my time in private. So when I go to public, it sounds like I've done it 10,000 times. I haven't done it 10,000 times in public. I've done it 10,000 times in here. So practice, drill, rehearse. Practice, drill, rehearse. All right. Any other questions out there? Lanita, I missed your comment. These concepts. Thank you, Lanita. These concepts are good to know if we ever want to invest in someone's business. Awesome. Glad to hear it. Any other questions or concerns as it relates to pitching, communicating, or you just have basic questions for me while you got me? I want to be mindful of time. We'll close out in the next 5 to 10 minutes, max. But if you're a student, what questions might you want to have answered? I've been in business for 20 years. I've been at the bottom, not at the top. I've got a long way to go. But I've been around the block a few times and can offer some support and some know-how there. So how can I be a resource to you?
I got a question.
Yeah, shoot.
This is Ari. Okay, so as far as like my main stumble is like I try to get the words to come out right, but I can't. I see it in my head, but I can't get it out either to the person in front of me or social media or text, whatever. So when those doors close, how many times did you have to get that fight out of you? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like I see the question in my head, correct, but like I said, I'm trying to. I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's like I don't know. I'm not scared to talk to anybody, but it's just trying to get that pitch perfect.
Yeah. You know what the irony is? And I'm glad you said that. My name of this talk probably was more counterproductive than anything else. Because there is no such thing as pitch perfect. But it is a catchy headline, right? I was trying to get attention. But that's the oxymoron. There is no pitch perfect. And I think if I heard you right, and what you said makes complete sense to me, right? You want to say something and you want to convey it and you know it has value, but it's not being received by the other party, and maybe you're hearing no or an objection or some issue and challenge. The question I have for you is Ari, is to what degree are you adjusting, right? So there's a feedback loop. So you said I can hear the passion in your voice. You go out there and speak to someone here's your audience, and you hear a no, right? What do you do with that no? Do you internalize it as something to make you insecure? Do you internalize it as something that says, I stumbled on my words, that's why it sucked? Do you internalize it as something that says something about who you are as a person? Do you internalize it as, shoot, I got to try again? Right? Like all of those answers put you back into a feedback loop where you haven't evolved and changed. And the only thing you can do is go back and do more of the same. So I have this thing I call the raw review. It's RAW. I do it 20 times a day. RAW. Every time I do anything of importance to me and I take pride in wanting to be better at it, I go through the RAW process. The R is recognize what went well. All right, so Ari, I got in front of someone and I wasn't scared. Checkbox, win. I actually said it again, even though I failed 10 times before. Checkbox again, I got some grit. Recognize all the things that went well. It could take 10 seconds. Just recognize what went well. This is hard for me because I always want to jump to the end of the equation, but it's so important to stop and recognize what went well. Because especially if you're hearing no, if all you have is no to rely on and bank on, you're going to start feeling the pressure of it and you're not going to want to try again. So you need to have a positive feedback loop where you recognize what went well. Got it? Secondly, you want to acknowledge what didn't go so well or where you could improve. And this requires some self-awareness. This requires you to step outside of the situation and ask different questions. Why did I hear no again? I wonder why he didn't call me back. And if all you have is more questions, the next part is the W. What will you do to resolve it? What work will you do? As in who, what, where, when. If I don't know why he said no, I wonder if I call him and ask him and say, hey, listen, I'm really trying to get better at what I want to do, but I didn't hear from you. And I don't want you to, feel pressure to, but just tell me, how could I improve? What didn't go right? And get the answer, not the ones that you've been practice drilling and rehearsing in your own head. Get a new script, right? Because for me, I can't deal with a series of no's. I'm sensitive that way. So I have to transform no's into a new blueprint for adapting and changing. Because if I don't adapt and change and all I have is the same old stuff to go out into the world and fight with, I'm not going to believe in my weapon. That's just me. I have a friend, one of my good friends in Hawaii, he's a real estate investor. He makes tens of millions of dollars. He could care less if he heard 4,000 no's. He's going to rage in, next one, guns ablazing, not going to change a dang thing, and he'll get his yes on the 4,001st thing. I'm not built that way. I'm different. So I'm more apt to adjust based upon the data that I'm receiving. But that comes with being self-aware. So what work will you do to improve? And by the way, going out and doing it again is work, but is it work to improve? And it's hard to improve if you don't acknowledge or know where you need to improve. So that's my RAW process. I take teams through it for big projects and I do it 20 times a day. I made a steak for dinner the other day. I went through what went well? Oh, this tastes good. That seasoning went well. All right, I smoked up the house. My wife didn't appreciate that. Maybe I'll open a window next time. Become cognizant and aware of where you want to improve. Hope that helps and makes sense.
Yes, it really do. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will be texting you because I need to learn some more of this.
Yeah.
Seriously.
No problem. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Denise, what is one piece of advice you would give to a person who has a new or budding business idea? If you have a new idea, let me make a new board for this. If you have a business, the only thing that matters in the beginning is this. That's it. When we're starting a business, we focus on everything that doesn't matter. You know how I know? Because I've done it dozens of times and I've seen hundreds. I'm not even putting that like over exaggerating. I've worked with thousands of businesses as a small business consultant. So I've seen hundreds of businesses focused on everything but this. And because of that, they die. They go out of business. What color should I have my logo be? How should I design my website? What social media profile names should I choose? None of that matters. The only obsession for the small businesses is how do I make money? Period. How do I make money? Who can I add, and here's the formula I say, right? You got to get attention. You got to get attention on valuable inventory. I can't spell, but valuable inventory that you can exchange at a profit. That's the equation. How much attention can you get on valuable inventory that you can exchange at a profit? Right? So you got to ask yourself, what valuable inventory do I have, i.e. product or service? Even if it's a service, do I have an inventory of it? One of the things that we run into as service providers, our inventory is ourselves, but we should be looking at ourselves as an inventory. Okay, I have 5 hours a day of inventory, as in service hours, to provide to the public, and it's a value. Who is it a value to? Remember we went through the target audience? Who is it a value to? Why is it a value to them? How much will they exchange for it? Right? You got to play the game of getting attention on that valuable inventory. I have 5 hours of inventory, right? And there may be 24 hours in a day, but you probably only have 5 hours to actually do service because you got to do marketing, you got to do other stuff, but 5 hours of inventory. 7 days a week gives me 35 hours of inventory. My hourly is $200. 200 times that is what? Right? It's $7,000 is what this business max out at. That would be my first target. How do I get my monthly to $7,000? And I make sure all 5 of my hours are booked out. So now I got to get attention to the people who value my inventory at $200 an hour. Who is that? Who is that values my inventory? How do I get their attention and say, hey, I got this for you. You have this problem. I can solve it. It's only $200 an hour, but it's costing you $500. It's a fair exchange. Let's do business. You're going to get tapped out eventually and not be able to service because you can't go more than 5 hours at a time. So first, you're trading what? Time for money. And eventually, when you start making that money, you trade money for time. And this is for service providers, not product providers out there. So you're trading time for money at first. Then once you make some money, you trade money for time. You go hire Ari's entrepreneur, but let's say Irene is an entrepreneur, but let's say she wanted a job. You pay Irene $2,000 for her time. So now you go from having 5 hours a day to having 10 hours a day. And you pay her $2,000 of that $7,000 that she makes. But you as an entrepreneur, your core job is to get attention on the valuable inventory. Right? You got to find others to service the actual work. Right? But first, and I hope this answers the question, first things first is you need to maximize your time that you trade for money if you're a service provider and focus mainly on getting attention on that valuable inventory. I can't read any of that, but hopefully that makes sense. Denise, do you have any different suggestions for those people who want to start nonprofits? I have one bit of advice. Whenever I sit down with a nonprofit, I always ask, who is the customer? And and who has matter of fact, anybody out here has a nonprofit? Anybody out there have a nonprofit? Who is your customer? Who is your customer if you have a nonprofit? Or Denise, do you have an idea of somebody who has a nonprofit? Who would they say their customer is? Yes, but she isn't here. Okay. All right. So here's the biggest issue that nonprofits have. They don't know who their customer is. They think that the community or the children or the people they help are their customers. They are not the customers. Customers are the ones who pay you, who keep the lights on. So the customers for nonprofits are the donors. And once you get that through your brain, you act different, you think different, you move different. Your customers are not the people you serve in the nonprofit space, it's the donors. So you got to go back to your audience and know what makes them happy. What is the value exchange? They're giving you dollars. What do they get in exchange? And how can you maximally communicate and get their attention of your valuable inventory? You have a valuable inventory in a nonprofit. It's the sense of social good. It's the feeling like you've done something. It's the sense that you have value. Most nonprofits drop the ball because they don't understand that their donors are the profit base. They send them a bunk thank you letter for donating, and that's it. How many ways can you help your donors feel like they got more value out of the exchange? Because the more value you can help donors to connect to, the more profits you have, right? And what are the profits in a nonprofit? Anybody who has to guess, what are the profits in a nonprofit? The profits in a nonprofit are the people you serve. The kids, one of my clients was the Boys and Girls Club of America. The kids are the profit. They aren't the customers. They're the profit. So you got to do this job well in order for you to do this job, to have profits. And that mind shift helps nonprofits who have a heart of gold to start really understanding the business side of running their organization. Got to take care of these folks first. All right.
I have one final question if you have time.
Okay.
It's from Heather. Do you need to make adaptations to a pitch for making software or apps?
No, the same thing applies. It's human psychology. Whether it's software, apps, food and beverage, real estate, service provider, it's all about, and we'll go back to it, it's all about the idea of transferring certainty. Right? You just have different things that will transfer certainty, maybe for software and app. Right? You have different competitors, you have different costs, you have different things that you need to explain, but the same cues, psychological cues, are there. If you go back to the founder story, right, or the customer story, can you instantly tell in 60 seconds what your software does? Right? Do you have your avatar story, where you can walk somebody through when they use it, how their life is different? Right? And do you know your numbers? There are different numbers in the software world. Churn rate, right? If you heard that, if you're developing software, what's your churn rate? What's your customer acquisition cost? You have different numbers, but you still need to check the box on all of those, right? Yeah.
So with that, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Eggs. This was wonderful. I greatly appreciate you sharing your expertise. And I'm just going to take over and share the screen and just remind everybody about one thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get my screen here. There we go. So yes, just to remind everybody, so we have 2 events every month. One is an entrepreneur panel, which is the second Wednesday of the month at 4 o'clock. And then we have our workshops every 4th hope you can join us on April 27 again. And if you're interested to hear from other entrepreneurs as well, please join us on the second Wednesday of the month. Thank you so much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you soon again.
All right, and here's that number if you needed it. Text me, ask your question, and I'll reply as soon as I can. Everybody take care. Have a good one. I'm out. Awesome, leader. I appreciate it. Yeah, please share. I do whiteboard fires about once a week. The next one we're doing is going to be on, let me see if I can even find the slide on it. The next one is how to get great testimonies. This is the one we're doing either, I haven't had a date, but if you want to learn how to get powerful testimonies from clients and things of that nature, definitely tune in. Text me at this number right here and put in the word live and you'll get my live schedule for other training. This was a training in conjunction with Entrepreneurship for All, Entrepreneur for All, and it was great. But we do these live whiteboard fires about once a week. All right. But I'm signing out, everybody. Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you. You were awesome. This was packed full of a lot of great information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate it. Appreciated being here. All right. All right, everybody. Live is finishing. 1.